160. He's gone.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of the forge build. Basically where we left off was we welded this piece in, we got our pipe tacked in. I actually had to cut it a little bit and re-tack it in from where we were because you want it pointing a little bit downwards. Give us lots of space over here to mount our air source. Plus I wanted to have this as parallel to the ground as I could. There's a little plate here so I can put a stand off of it if I need to help support the weight. The next big thing we gotta do is we gotta kind of finish welding this out right here, and at that point we can pour the bottom. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up real quick, and then we'll cut right back to where we're ready to get going with the pour. Well, definitely not going to win any awards for beauty, but it's all fully welded up. Now the next step is to mix up our refractory cement that needs to go up and make about 3 inches here in the bottom of the bucket. And we're going to use this guy right here. This is just some random container I have to mix everything up. So the ratio is you want 1.75 jars of plaster of Paris, 1.75 jars of play sand, and 1.25 jars of water, and that's kind of your ratio, and you can basically scale up or scale down however you want. Now the trick with this stuff is that you got to mix it pretty quick and pour it pretty quick, because after about 15 minutes it actually already starts to harden a little bit, and so you don't want that. So we're gonna get this mixed up real quick and pour it in here, and I got the 3-inch line marked off, so we just got to get a nice kind of base in here just to make sure we got enough coverage, and it should be good to go. So there's our mix. That's actually 1.75 of these jars. Unfortunately I don't really know how big these jars are. That looks like way more than we need to fill the bottom of this nice and evenly. So next step is I'm gonna go over here to the fire hose and get 1 1/4 jars of water. Now you just got to get messy. Just mix it all up until there's no more clumps, because right now you can feel down here in the bottom there's a lot of clumps, a lot of the sand. You want it all to be kind of in solution, if you will. And so just keep working it. Any clumps you find, just work them out with your fingers. And once you have this kind of nice runny mixture and there's no more clumpinesses, pour it in. And remember, we don't want any on the inside of our little Actually, to be honest with you, that amount that I used is basically perfect. We're at the 3-inch line here, so I'm going to mix it up a little bit more in here just by hand. We're going to let it set, and from what I understand, this stuff should reach a certain level of hardness in just like 15 or 25 minutes, at which point we can set our mold inside of here and weld up the rest of it. But I wanted to pour this kind of footer first so that we have some weight in here, some density, and we got something to set our mold on top. While we're waiting for that cement to dry, turn our attention to our lid. And so a couple things. First of all, we're going to keep this handle. I don't really see any reason to make a new one when this works so well. So we're going to weld this back on where it was. In the middle, we're going to run a piece of tube up to the level of the flat plane in order for it to have a vent for the heat to escape. And then we're going to put in a little bit of rebar in here, and we're actually going to fill this bad boy up with plaster as well. There you go. There's a little piece of pipe. We're going to just weld it right on top of there. And as you can see, it's a little bit taller than the edges of this lip. and so that way we can fill up the lip all the way with mortar or whatever you want to call it, refractory cement. And this guy will protrude a little bit, making sure that there's unimpeded airflow going out the top. There are our pieces of rebar, and now we're just going to tack weld them in real quick. There we go, we got our lid poured, and now that can just chill, and we can obviously going to be able to weld hinges onto it later after that's hardened up. This, our main feast here, has been sitting for probably 30 minutes, and you can see there's a little layer of water on top, but it's pretty stout. Carry it back over to our workbench. Begin tack welding that middle piece back in there so we can get our full height. There we go, we got it on there pretty even. And now all I'm going to do is I'm going to stitch weld. There you go, those stitch welds. So you got good penetration on the inside. Right there, basically all you need. And to prove that it's good, it's on there solid. There we go, we got our side stitch welded. Drop our tube in, put a weight on top just to keep it from seeping in through the bottom. And now we can basically just start pouring in concrete on the side. So I picked this up at the steel yard today. It's about 7 inches tall, 6 inches in diameter. It's a really pretty thick wall, so it's going to hold in heat. It's going to take this thing a while to get up to temperature, but once it does, we should be able to melt a ton of aluminum. And so this is going to be kind of our king crucible. What we did was, I have some of this plate, traced out a circle. Now what we're going to do is we're going to strap this down to the bench, we're going to plasma cut this out. We're going to make an attempt to weld this with a little flux core 100 amp welder, but if it proves to be not effective, I'll use the stick or the TIG welder in the garage to do it. And the reason this is important is because there's going to be liquid aluminum in here, and so there can't be any gaps, any holes, whatever, otherwise it'll just pour out and it'll be wasteful. If you're at home and you're like, well, it's pretty thick, I don't know if I can weld this, Your other alternative is to find some sort of metal container. You know, you want something heavier duty than like a paint can, but like a butane bottle or something like that work pretty well. Cut that apart just like we did the propane tanks. Should give you a comparable size crucible.
If it's where I die, here once.
So we got our crucible all done. The walls look like a mess, but they seem to hold water, so we can leave that be. And at this point, we're just kind of clean everything up and pack up for the day. Well, guys, that pretty much concludes it for part 2 of this build. As you can see, we got our concrete poured. It's going to sit up overnight, make sure it's nice and dry. We got our crucible made, and so in part 3. I'm going to do some final assembly. We're going to build some cool tools that are going to help us work with this stuff. And we'll buy some charcoal and hopefully get this bad boy fired right up. If you don't, make sure you follow me on Instagram at MaksWerks, Facebook /MaksWerks. Check out the website, MaksWerks.com. And as always, if you're new here, please subscribe. If you want to leave me a thumbs up, thumbs down, give me a comment. Let me know what you guys think. I will see you in part 3.